then just enhancing upon them. Once you find boring, just let me know and I'll stop this. So the applicability of the bill, it's like on data that's collected online and digitized. It will also apply to processing of personal data outside India. It is for offering goods and services. Within India, we have read that processing has been defined as automated operation or set of operations performed on digital personal data. It includes collection, storage, use, and sharing. So be very careful when you guys are doing that within your company, okay? So even storing data is processing data. And that's also in the GDPR. You store data, that's processing data. So when you talk to your fellow non-GDPR experts and you tell them we are processing data, they might not understand. Then you have to make them understand that you stored this data at this cloud service or here or there, and that's how it is processing. Too small. Okay, can't see it. Can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am, it's fine.
Is it visible? It's just something that's already in the bill. It's nothing that I have specially written. And I'll share this with you. I have already shared it with you, so you'll get this. Then it talks about consent. Personal data may be processed only for lawful purposes for which an individual has given consent. Okay, a notice must be given before seeking consent. Notice should contain details about personal data to be collected and purpose of processing. So that is very good. See, not everything about the bill is going to be bad. There are going to be good things also. So if the consent form has to talk about the details of the purpose of processing and what personal data are you going to collect through this. Consent may be withdrawn at any point of time. So that is easy. Consent will be deemed given where processing is necessary. So, we talked about when will consent be deemed and who will decide that the consent is deemed. Here are certain situations where we say that the consent will be deemed. When it is necessary for performance of any function under the law, if the law requires it to be, by law, if you have to store some data, if you have to have a voters list data, like, all the people living in a municipality, and by law, the municipality has to have details of those people in their database, the name of the person, the address of the person, the age of the person, and everything. So that is by law. It will be deemed consent if the municipality is doing that. Then provision of service or benefit by the state. So if there is a service that the state is providing or a benefit that the state is providing, for example, pension. Okay, if you are a state government employee and you're providing a pension, then what happens in that case? In that case, the state will have your data. The state will also have some of your financial data where you are getting sorry, I started reading the question and that's why I digress. So where you start, where you get the pension, so the state will have your bank details, your financial data and everything. Then the third is medical emergency. So in case there is a medical emergency and there is no time, right? Remember in GDPR, I read about the vital interest of people where you have to save somebody's life and you don't have time to get consent. So when you're using their previous medical information or, you just take out their blood, you see their blood group and everything, you see their personal information, you store that data, that will be. But then what emergency will be considered a medical emergency? Like what will be the definition of emergency when it comes to medical? Somebody just gets a disease and trips and you don't know what happened. Will that be a medical emergency? Somebody gets a heart attack or a sudden fit of something. Will that be a medical emergency? So what will be? What medical situation will lead to an emergency? I know for a lot of you, it might be a very commonsensical question that, okay, why will somebody fall dizzy and that will be you don't know what happens when a person falls dizzy and for what reasons they fall dizzy. So that specified public interest purposes such as national security, fraud prevention, and information security. So see, I also do not understand here, and a lot of people have questioned this, that why would you include national security and fraud prevention together, right? How does national security and fraud prevention go hand in hand? Why have they been labeled in the same sentence? So that's something that we're looking answers for, that National security and public safety goes hand in hand. National security and fraud prevention doesn't go hand in hand. So what's the motive here? Why they have been put in one line? That is a very academic question to ask right now, but that's something you should pay attention on when you're reading this bill. Okay. Now going forward, rights and duties have been mentioned. That's what's the rights and duties of data principal. Data principal is the person whose data is being processed. So data principal is basically your data subject. And the rights is to obtain information about processing, seek correction and erasure of personal data, nominate other person to exercise rights in event of death or incapacity. That is something really good. Grievance redressal. Data principals will have certain duties as well. They must not register a false or frivolous complaint, furnish false particulars, suppress information, or impersonate other person specified cases. Violation of duties will be punishable with penalty up to 10,000. And this is something to appreciate because it gives an obligation upon the data principal, the data subjects also. When you look at the GDPR, the data subject doesn't really have any obligation there. It's very rights oriented. It's very inclined towards the data subjects, right? Nowhere it tells that the data subjects also had some obligations. Nowhere it talks about it. But here it lays down certain obligations upon them. The obligations are not very stringent. They're very normal obligations that you should not come up with false information. You should not give frivolous information or complain. You should not furnish false information or suppress information. And the fine is also not very huge. The fine is also just 10,000 rupees. But then this at least lays down certain obligations and this is the way to curb frivolous cases. Then obligations of data fiduciaries. So who is a data fiduciary is like the person who determines the purpose and the means of processing. That is your data controller. Your data controller decides how and why your data will be processed. So it's the same. So what does a data controller or data fiduciary in this case do? Make reasonable efforts to ensure accuracy and completeness of data. Very logical. If the data is not accurate and not complete, the data controller doesn't get the desired output. So they should ensure that the data is accurate and complete. However, a lot of times data subjects do not really provide accurate data. If I have to go on internet and put my date of birth, I have, I think, 10 date of birth somewhere. I'm not really providing accurate data there. But yes, build reasonable security safeguards to prevent a data breach and inform Data Protection Board of India an affected person in event of breach. So it should also talk about the time frame within which they must inform 72 hours, 24 hours and all that. And see, when we were reading the GDPR, we were all talking about the breach and you have to reach out to the Data Protection Authority. Here they have to reach out to the Data Protection Board of India. And what I see here that it will not be a centralized board, but there can be several state-wise board also. Or in certain metropolitan areas, there can be a state-wise board if need be, because one central place, the complaints or questions are going there, they will be overloaded with work. So there can be certain delegation of power. However, it is not clear yet if they will or they'll not be. Then it talks about build reasonable security safeguard. That means the technical and organizational measures we have read multiple times. That what are your technical and organizational measures? How is an organization protecting the data? So these are the things they have to take care of. Then transfer of personal data outside India. The central government will notify countries where a data fiduciary may transfer personal data. Transfer will be subject to prescribed terms and conditions. So the government controls this, and which is a good thing in a way. The government lays down, and it is uniform throughout all the industries. That these are the conditions by which you can process data or transfer data. Then what are the exemptions here? Rights of data principles and obligations of data fiduciaries will not apply in specified cases, including prevention and investigation of offences, enforcement of legal claims. The central government may by notification exempt certain activities from applications of the provisions of the bill. This includes processing by government entities in the interest of security of the state and public order. See, here also they talk about interest of security of the state and public order. It does not talk about fraud prevention. That's something very different in that case, where it just puts public security and state security and fraud prevention in the same sentence. That looks a little odd to me after having read so many legislations. Also for research, archiving, or statistical purposes. This is something we've also seen in the GDPR, that for research purposes, scientific purposes, and for statistical purposes, data can be stored and you cannot object to it. Then the Data Protection Board of India. The central government will establish a Data Protection Board of India. Key functions of the board will include monitoring compliance and imposing penalties, directing data fiduciaries to take necessary measures in event of data breach. However, the fiduciary should always have this list of what they'll do if there is a data breach. It's not like there is a data breach and they reach out to the data protection board and the board tells, now you should do this, now this is the list. But in how much time should the data controller, data fiduciaries in this case, should reach out to the data protection board? So all that needs to be specified here. Then hearing grievances made by affected persons. So this will be a central. It's like the Competition Commission, right? They are specified in their approach and they listen to all the competition laws. It's similar. The central government will prescribe composition of the board, selection process, terms and conditions of appointment and service, and the manner of removal. So imagine the central government is playing a very, very huge role in this. So this board doesn't really look like an independent composition. They'll owe favors to the government, and it might happen that once it's formed, they devise their own means, and we'll have to see how much is the government going to interfere in the process after the means and modes of selection has been specified. But as of now, the board looks very much in the clutches of the government. So now the penalty. So the schedule to the bill specifies penalties for various offences, such as up to 150 crore for non-fulfillment of obligation for children, up to 250 crores for failure to take security measures to prevent data breaches, security measures, geotechnical and organizational measures. So it lays an obligation upon your companies which are processing data fiduciaries in that case, that they have to have a good organizational as well as technical measures. And penalties will be imposed by the board after conducting an inquiry. So an inquiry will be conducted, and that is very reasonable. It is not arbitrary. An inquiry must be conducted before the board gives it a reasoned decision. So I hope when the board gives a decision, this is also a reasoned decision. They have reasons behind coming to a conclusion, and it's not like a decision they decided upon without telling people why they came up to it.